Hey, welcome to Leading with Gratitude Live. I'm your host, Chester Elton, the apostle of appreciation, coming to you from the Gratitude Epicenter of the Universe Summit, New Jersey. You know, I always say, look, give us 30 minutes. We'll give you great information, great inspiration, and a roadmap to a life of gratitude. Well, I'm really excited to introduce to you my new friend, Jonah Paquett, who's written a wonderful book called Awestruck. He works in all kinds of interesting areas with all kinds of interesting companies. And so I just want to, without further ado, welcome Jonah to the show. Welcome.
I am so honored to be here. Thank you so much for having me, Chester.
Yeah, now give us a little bit of your bio. Tell us a little bit, because, you know, I know you as the author of Awestruck, and we're going to get into your great book in just a few minutes, but that's not your day job. So tell us about your day job and what led you to write this wonderful new book.
Yeah, well, I like to wear a few different hats. So my day job is I work for an organization called Kaiser Permanente, which is a pretty big presence, hospital presence out here in California. And I'm very involved in what's called a mental health training program. So people that are becoming psychologists, social workers, things like that. So my core day job is helping to run those programs. Outside of that, because I always like more things to do, I've written 3 research-based self-help books. So Real Happiness, The Happiness Toolbox, and most recently Awestruck, which those have really opened up doors to do something I love, which is going and meeting with individuals, organizations, fellow clinicians, and the public, talking about themes like happiness, well-being, increasing life satisfaction, and awe more recently. So I try to keep pretty busy with those things, but keeps life interesting.
I'll bet. You know, what's really fun about these live shows on LinkedIn, and we're simulcasting all over the place on Twitch and Facebook and everywhere else, is the international, you know, people that come in. So I would just want to read out a couple. We got Laura from, she's Lebanese living in Saudi Arabia. We've got Kamal, who's a human resource leader. We've got Barbara from Poland, Jennifer from Phoenix, Lorena from Chile, and on, Mexico, Virginia, Kuwait. We got Yamila from Cuba. Oh, I was in Cuba last year. It was beautiful.
I've always wanted to go.
Rena from Stockholm. So yeah, what's your favorite place on the planet?
Tough call. I would say probably the favorite place that I've been to was probably South Africa. But I love to travel. So wherever life can take me, that's been one of the toughest things, I would say, which is a good problem to have, but not being able to see the world these last 6 months or so. So this has given me a lot of good ideas, actually, just looking at the list of people. So thank you for the tips.
Yeah, let's hope we can travel soon. So talk to me about your book, Awestruck. You know, you and I had a chance to chat last night, and I just loved your take on how healthy it is to connect with awe. Expound on that.
Yeah. So I wrote this book kind of from a personal place, which was, I had this kind of realization over time that these moments of wonder, of transcendence, these moments in life that make us go, wow, were really important to me. And then I started to look into some of the research that was just starting to come out on it. And it turns out that when we experience these moments of awe, it doesn't just feel good in the moment. It actually has lasting mood boosts. It changes our immune system. It has particular effects on our brain. It improves and strengthens our relationships, and on and on. So it turned out there were these incredible benefits that come from experiencing awe. And I had always had the assumption that these types of moments were kind of like the cherry on top of the good life sundae, that, they were nice, but they weren't particularly that important. And what this research has really shed light on for me is that they're actually some of the most important moments of our lives. And those moments that make us go, wow, can be the very moments that change our life.
It's so funny. In my family, we have a fun thing. We say, you don't just say, wow, you say, wow.
I like it. So you were onto something.
This is wow. So, now
you're ahead of the game.
Yeah, you talked about how it can help you with anxiety. My co-author Adrian Gossick and I, we've been doing a lot of work on anxiety at work. I'd love to hear more about how connecting with awe does help you kind of tamp down anxiety and stress.
Yeah, well, among other things, it increases activation of basically our relaxation response. So the part of our nervous system that's responsible for not the fight and flight, but the rest and digest, the sort of relaxation side of things, actually becomes active when we experience these moments of awe. So it actually promotes relaxation. It lowers levels of stress. And what's, to me, one of the coolest findings on that area is that it doesn't just make us less stressed right during or immediately after that experience. Even weeks later, studies have shown that powerful moments of awe, powerful moments of wonder actually help us remain in that state of lower stress overall. And you mentioned the workplace. It also has been shown to improve, for one thing, relationships. So interpersonal relationships at work can be strengthened, and even cognitive functioning, like mental sharpness, things like that. So there's a lot of benefits that we're just starting to scratch the surface on.
I find that so fascinating. I'm a journaler. I got into writing journals when I was in high school and different things, and have kept it up. I've probably got 40 journals over the years. And I'm always surprised that when you go back, that recognition, that recognition, where you'll go back and you'll read an entry in your journal from years ago, and it really does take you right back to that moment, isn't it?
Yeah, and it turns out that's a super important point for all of us to remember definitely for awe, but even for a lot of these sort of positive memories, moments of well-being. We know from the research that if I just reminisce on good times, so kind of gratefully reminisce over something that happened years ago, it releases serotonin in our brain, even that very thing that we sort of want, that antidepressants try to do. So there's a lot of benefits that come from that kind of recall. Now, unfortunately, we all know the opposite side of that too, right? Where we think about something, we ruminate on something, we replay something that happened in the past, whether it was a week ago or a year ago or even a decade ago. And if it's a negative thing, we feel that in our body too. So our mind has this incredible ability to kind of take us different places, and our body and our brain, they respond accordingly with about 70% the same reaction as when it's happening. But on that topic of awe, if you're a journaler, anyone that's watching this, yes, it's great to go out and experience the wonders of life. But even if you just think back on those moments, you look at a picture that reminds you of it, you look at a journal entry that reminds you of it, you get a lot of those same benefits. Maybe not all, but quite a bit, just from that kind of reminiscence.
Yeah. It's interesting. Amy Balog, and I hope I said your name right, Amy, she said, I think there's so much peace embedded in awe. And we've talked about that. There's peace. And then you've mentioned the opposite is also true, right? Like when you go back to those tense moments where, that conversation or that he said, and then I should have said, and then you get yourself all worked up. So how do you counteract that? When we talk about triggers in our work life and so on, you want to trigger the positive, you want to kind of subdue the negative. Have you come across any techniques that you can share with our listeners? Yeah. How do you keep it positive so that you don't go down that rabbit hole and all of a sudden, you're driving 80 miles an hour in a school zone?
This is a great question. And, I think for one thing, it's normal, right? Because we all have this negativity bias in our brain, human beings as a whole, which is good for survival. None of us would be here if our ancestors, if caveman Jonah would walk outside 2,000 years ago and say, oh, what a beautiful day to be alive. And then I get, eaten by a saber-toothed tiger. So, it helps us to survive, but it's really lousy when it comes to feeling peace and balance and well-being. And, we're not going to undo it, but we have to consciously find ways to achieve that balance. And, I know that in your writing and your talk, you talk a lot about gratitude, for example. And, if we do even something like writing down a few things each day that went well that day, or writing down a few things that we're grateful for, or a moment of awe, that can help balance that a little bit. And we could do that in, of course, many different ways. But we actually have to consciously and deliberately find a way to do that, because otherwise our baseline often defaults to the negative.
Yeah. It is really interesting. You say you have these various techniques and how to stay positive and so on. Mm-hmm. Walk me through your book. First off, we can find your book on Amazon and everywhere.
Yeah.
Is that where
Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Penguin, Random House. Mm-hmm.
Excellent. And your website is jonahpaquett.com. We
Yes.
threw that up. So if you want to learn more about
Thank you.
Jonah's work, walk me through how your book is written. What are the stages and what can people look forward to?
Great. Well, yeah, thanks for asking. I put the book into basically two large sections. So there's basically there's a part one and a part two of the book. And part one explains the mystery of awe, in a sense. So it goes into what is awe. So how do we define this really, at times, difficult to define experience? We go into a little bit of the history of it, how it's been hypothesized over the years and all that. But mostly I go into what does it do for us psychologically, interpersonally, and even physiologically. So part one roughly speaks to the benefits of these moments. So how does it actually improve our mental health, our stress, our physical health, and even our brain and our nervous system? So that is the focus on the first part. And then part two has about 65 different micro practices. So it's everything from visualizations, meditations, but also just little tips on how we might find awe in everyday life. And that was really one of the things I wanted to focus on. Was I didn't want to have recommendations of, okay, everybody go off to see the Grand Canyon or the Great Barrier Reef. I mean, that would be great. I'd love to do that, but life can be busy and it's expensive. So what I wanted to also do was find ways that, in the context of our everyday life, where so many moments of wonder can be missed, how can we open our eyes to what's there? So a lot of the practices focus more on simple tips for, how can you on an everyday basis find a moment of awe?
Give us three of your favorite tips. I mean, 65 is phenomenal.
Yeah.
Are there some of those that you have really adopted that have become almost daily practices for you to stay in that state of awe?
Yeah, well, and I think it's probably setting a bar too high for us to kind of constantly be experiencing it. But the good news is even experiencing awe a couple of times a week has been shown to have a really powerful effect on our physical and psychological health. So for any viewers, we don't have to even set the bar quite so high. I think it's finding a way, even a few times a week, to put ourselves in that position. And I would say for me, I've tried a few different things that I think are really simple. And one speaks to what you mentioned earlier, which is the kind of journaling or re-experiencing. I would call it broadly like re-experiencing awe. So whether that's, looking at a favorite picture that brings up a memory, sharing an experience that you've had with somebody so you can replay it in your mind, looking at an old journal, an old trinket, a reminder of a past experience. So finding ways to re-experience those moments is hugely important. Number two, for me, I happen to just find a lot of awe in nature. And we sometimes think of nature as being, we have to set the bar really high too. Even if we just once a week find a way to just notice the changing colors of the leaves, look up at the moon, gaze at a beautiful sunrise or sunset, take a walk where it's a green space and just allow ourselves to feel connected to that. Just those small steps in nature can be really important. And then I think on a simple everyday level, I sometimes will stop and think to myself, what are the odds of existence right now? I mean, it's a mind-blowing thing to think about. How long Earth has been around, and just what were if you were to calculate the odds of any of us being here right now and right in this moment, it's as close to zero as you can get without being zero. And how mind-blowing that is. Every breath we take, every encounter that we have is truly a gift in that way. And there's an awe that can come from that. So those are a few ways that I try to kind of think about it and kind of keep that in the forefront of my mind in everyday life.
I love nature. When you look at it, it really is amazing. We've got a little place out in the woods, and I put up a Canadian flag. That's how I'm in residence. Like Pope has his flag, and I've got my Canadian.
That's right.
And there was one time when a Luna moth, about 3 of them, perched on the flag. And if you've ever looked at a Luna moth, it is unbelievably complex and incredibly beautiful, and huge, by the way. Sophie's got a great question here, and I want to get to it, although I just lost it on the feed here. She says, can you comment on double loop learning, opportunity of reflecting back on moments of awe? Does it shape our self-construct? There we go. And by the way, I want to give a quick call out. We got Christy Lawrence, who is the ghost in the machine, runs all our questions and stuff from her porch in Atlanta, Georgia. We'll bring her on at the end. But in fact, let's bring her in just really quick. I'm going to add you to the stream. Wave to the crowd there, Christy. We've got a crazy thing. There we go. We'll go back. She really does make this all happen. So we're grateful for Christy. But the double loop construct. Talk to us a little bit about that, and how does it shape your self-construct?
So I, in terms of reflecting back on moments of awe, if I'm kind of reading this correct, and how does that shape our self-construct? Well, I take a big page from, there's a neuropsychologist who I love named Rick Hansen, if anybody's ever heard of him. And he always talks about the fact that who we are, our self-construct, our brain, but really our mind, really is a result of where we turn our attention. And I think this is something that we often undervalue, that we can't control situations in life. We can't control the things that happen to us, but how we respond and also where do we focus is one of the very few things that we often have a lot of power over. And so, for example, if I am constantly focusing on other things, stress, negativity, worry, fear, apprehension, insecurities, I'm going to be priming the pump, but I'm also actually going to be changing my brain and wiring my brain for worry, for anxiety, for fear. And on the flip side, if I find a way to kind of shift my awareness to the things that are right, whether that's awe, whether that's gratitude, whether that's reflecting back on positive memories and experience I've had with other people, that absolutely has an incredible impact on our sense of self, on who we are in the world. I mean, that's actually one of the most powerful things we can do, is to bring our awareness to not only see the whole picture, but to notice the things that are right. So I don't know if that quite sums up that piece on the double loop learning, but that's kind of what resonates for me on that.
I love your comment on it's how you respond. There are so many things that happen to us, and your response to it, I think, really says a lot about your character and your values and so on. In our book, and I've got a little plug for, by the way, you got to hold up your book every now and again, Jonah. There you go. Perfect.
We'll hold it up.
Yeah, we talk about assume positive intent.
Yeah.
And that to me is, again, playing on this positivity where you say, look, I'm going to assume that you're trying to do a good job at work, and in trying to do that, you're going to make mistakes, and that's okay. Let's fix the mistake. Let's not try to fix you. And it 100%. Seems to me that the play in there with Awestruck is how you react to those situations. My father used to say, isn't that a magnificent storm? He loved a good lightning storm. And of course it is wonderful as long as it's far enough away.
Keep it a distance.
Keep it a distance. And there, I think it was Albert Einstein, one of my favorite quotes, where he said, there are people that see miracles in nothing, and those that see miracles in everything. I am of the latter.
Yes. And
by the way, Sophie said yes.
That made the quote on chapter 1, by the way, was that Einstein quote. I love it.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, so wonderful.
Yeah.
It's going to be great. Joshua and I are going to do a book exchange here. We kind of pulled this up really quick. And so normally I would have the book and have a chance to read it. And that's why I love to have you walk us through part 1 and part 2. So I love asking this question about, so what What really inspired you to write the book? This is your third book. Was there a progression to get to Awestruck? Tell us a little bit about your first two books as well.
Yeah, so my first two books were broadly focused on a subfield of psychology called positive psychology, which some of the viewers and listeners would know. And it's basically the science of well-being. So psychologists like myself and for the past century have really focused a lot and actually done a lot of incredible work on all the negative parts of life, the ways that we can suffer, anxiety, stress, depression, trauma, you name it, which is all super important, but it also misses part of the picture. When we are at our best, when we're flourishing, when we're thriving, those types of questions hadn't really gotten much attention. So my first two books kind of tried to answer that question of what are the ingredients of a life well lived? What can all of us do in terms of habits, skills, behaviors, and attitudes to live our best life? And it focused on a lot of concepts like gratitude, which I know is very near and dear to your heart, mindfulness, compassion towards others, compassion towards ourselves, acceptance. So it focused on those themes. But where I really started to get interested in awe was these last few years as a bit more research started to come out and emerge on it, because it's an ancient concept. It's a universal human emotion. We felt it for thousands of years, but there wasn't any real research done on awe until the last few years, really. So I started to get really into it, and I had this very sort of profound moment of awe on a trip a couple of years ago, where there was an incredible storm over a beach where we were staying. And right at the end of the storm, the skies parted and there was a double rainbow. And it was just the most picturesque. I felt like a tingle down my spine just from that moment. I was thinking, how incredible to be alive and to witness this, especially because the storm was at a little bit of a distance. How cool. And I thought to myself, well, I wonder if anybody's done a book on this or written much about it. So we went back to the little place we were staying. It was on an island, very remote, 56K dial-up modem. It took me about 4 hours to research what should have taken me 20 minutes. But I got the answer I was looking for, which was there were starting to be studies on this, but nobody had really written a book on it. So that was when my inspiration for the book kind of took shape, because I knew that these moments mattered. I could see very quickly that they had a positive effect on us inside and out, head to toe. And I wanted to share that with people because my sense was, and I think that's been certainly borne out too, is, people have very meaningful experiences like this, but they don't realize how important those experiences are. They don't realize just how much that touches us to the core of who we are. So that was part of my inspiration for writing the book.
You say 56K modem. It reminds me of the old AOL discs. That was probably before your time.
I remember that.
Anyway, talk to me about how can we use this? Have you looked at research on how you can use it with children? More and more you're seeing the young people, as we started to do our research on anxiety at work. It was really interesting how the younger generations are much more comfortable about talking about anxiety and talking about stress. And, we're seeing it younger and younger, and whether it's they're constantly online or the images they're seeing or the gaming, everybody's got a strategy. Have you found your work being particularly comforting to younger kids that are maybe a little more anxious and a little more stressed?
Well, I think it has great implications for younger kids, and it's definitely started to be looked at in terms of teens. One well-known study on the impact of awe and stress was actually done with teenagers who were undergoing a lot of toxic stress, and it turned out to be really beneficial for them. So it has big implications. I would actually say when you go a little younger than that, in some ways, it's we who need to learn from those kids, because kids, I think, are naturally awestruck. If you've ever spent time with, young kids, and those that have kids, or you have nieces, nephews, or teach, if you're a teacher, you see this every day. There's this incredible sense of wonder and amazement on things that we as jaded grown-ups kind of take for granted and we don't see as special. I remember, I think it was Picasso that had a great quote that he said, all children are artists. It was something like all children are artists, and the hard part is helping them remain artists when they grow up. And I think all kids are awestruck in a sense where, something that we would take for granted, like a bug on the ground, they think is the coolest thing in the world. So on the one hand, I think it's about helping to preserve that sense of childlike wonder in kids and to help nurture that and to foster that. But to your question, yeah, there's absolutely some really nice evidence on how you can use this with teens, within families. How do you inspire these conversations, with your children so that they can see the wow-inducing parts of life? Because if they do that, they're going to be less stressed. They're going to be more curious. They're going to be, feel more connected to you and to others. So really important, I think, to maintain these habits among the younger generation.
It is so interesting you mentioned that about young kids, how everything is awesome, right? We've got 2 grandkids that don't live too far from us, and we kind of forgotten that. Our kids are older now and married and moved away and so on, and then moved back. And the point is that there's something about a child's face when they just go, that just is, it's just thrilling. And
incredible.
We forget to remember the awe around us. Isn't that fascinating?
That is fast. Yeah, totally. And I think we have to rediscover that. And, I think there's so many pressures on us, whether it's lengthening work days and being glued to phones all the time and, being surrounded by concrete in many cases 24/7. I think we have to consciously try to break that cycle and find those moments of wonder that are around us in life.
So in the workplace, are there particular companies or particular leaders that you've seen that you can share some best practices with us that have taken advantage of this and really brought it into their teams or brought it into their organizations particularly well?
This is a great question because I think this is a very cutting edge area that, because the research is so new, you haven't seen a ton of implementation, I would say, in the workplace the way you've seen with other positive psychological skills. Like, for example, I think you see compassionate leadership taking off more these days. You see leading with gratitude, to your point, really as being, I would say, by the smart organizations out there and the wise leaders really being, taking that to heart. I think with awe, there are interesting ways that we might think about how to sort of include this in the workplace, but it's definitely a cutting edge kind of new area that if organizations adopt this, it has huge implications in terms of working more productively, working more effectively with teams. I mean, even if you just think about what does awe do beyond helping people feel less stressed, less anxious, less depressed, it binds people together. It's a very collective emotion. So when we experience awe, we feel more connected to our team. When we experience awe, we have an urge to be more altruistic. So it actually promotes altruism and kindness. And it also makes people more curious and mentally sharp. So even just those 3 benefits, you can imagine what that would do for smart organizations out there that think in terms of how might we put this into practice, whether that's periodically taking your team, post-COVID, obviously, but on an awe-inducing retreat somewhere, whether that's having, an opportunity to share experiences of awe during staff meetings when somebody comes back from a trip, for example, somewhere. You could be creative and play around with it. Having even green spaces integrated into parts of the building, having artwork that evokes a sense of awe, having any number of things that I think would evoke a feeling of awe. The benefits to the workplace, I think, would be huge.
Yeah. That thing about sharper and more curious, that plays right into innovation. Okay. Well, listen, we got 3 minutes left. So I'm going to have 2 questions. I know it's blown by. I've got 2 questions for you. One is I want you to give us 3 tips for people that you want them to take away around the message of, awe. And then I'm going to ask you, we have a wonderful thing I do every day. I post a little picture, hashtag find your gratitude. And I'm going to ask you, what are you grateful for today? So 3 tips, find your gratitude, and then we'll wrap up. Time's yours.
So 3 practices kind of beyond the ones that I threw in before. I would say number 1, finding awe through the things that just blow our mind is sometimes an underrated thing. So if you think about learning about topics that expand your mind, that make you feel small, learning about the universe, learning about outer space, learning about science, learning about topics that kind of shift the way that we think, going out of our way to do that can be absolutely awe-inspiring. Number 2, learning about people whose courage, ability, inspiration uplift us and elevate us can be a very awe-inspiring practice. So going out of our way, whether that's in formal or informal ways, and really allowing those people to change us, to help us, remind us of the potential of human beings, that can be absolutely awe-inspiring. And on the tip of gratitude, I'm just going to say, when we actually pause and we take in just the bounty of how much goodness there is in our life, even amongst the most difficult of times, how awe-inspiring that is when we can stop and say, despite all these things happening that maybe I wish were different, what a gift to have a bed, to have a roof over my head, to have food to eat, to have people to love. And to have that exist in our life is truly awe-inspiring. So in the book, I'll hold it up again. You have a lot of different.
Hold it up for longer. People need to see what it looks like. Yeah.
You could learn all kinds of different ways, not only to learn why these moments are so important, but how to cultivate them, how to develop them, how to really build this mental muscle to become more awe-inspiring. So the book is Awestruck, and I would be honored if anybody checked it out, and be in touch if you like it, and post a review if you enjoy it. And I hope that it helps you and others who are watching.
That's great. And where did you find your gratitude today, Jonah?
I would say, but besides my morning cup of coffee, which I'm always grateful for, honestly, and I'm not just saying this, to be able to chat with somebody who I think I not only admire a lot, which is you, just the work that you do, the people, the lives that you touch, but you're also just a genuinely good dude. I love talking to good, interesting people, and to me, that has already made today a good day. So thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, you're too kind. I'm grateful for our new friendship as well. I hope this isn't the last time our paths cross.
100%.
Well, it's Jonah Paquett. It's, the book on awe. You're going to love it. Awestruck. Make sure you check it out. It's available on Amazon. If you've got Prime, it could be there in 2 days.
That's right.
I love the practice of leading with gratitude. I hope you'll check out our book as well. We find that people that lead with gratitude, it's not just a better way to lead at work, it's just a better way to live.
Mm-hmm.
I want to share a little thing I'm grateful for today. It's my 37th wedding anniversary today. I've been married 37 years to the lovely Heidi Olson Elton. We have 4 amazing kids, 2 amazing grandchildren. I want to bring Christy back into the screen. We're always grateful for Christy and what she brings to the table, making it all happen. Listen, we try to do this twice a week, at 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We love all the international people that joined us from all over the world today. I hope you'll join us again Thursday at 1 o'clock, Leading with Gratitude Live. We're grateful for your time. We're grateful for your questions and your great ideas. And Jonah, we're grateful that we now know you.
Thank you so much.
Everybody, have a great day, and hopefully we'll see you again Thursday. Cheers.
Thank you.